Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Hope you guys are having a great day so far and a great week early on here. Kip here, your whiskey tour guide, with today's Tuesday Toast to History. So, let's talk a little bit. Today is actually Tuesday, March the 5th, right? 2 days ago was March the 3rd, math, which was a significant date, and if you followed along, you may have seen some other people talking about it, but we're just going to talk about it as well, give a little history. See, back in the late 1800s, what was happening in America in the whiskey industry is that these distillers were making their whiskey. But what would happen then, instead of going to like a retail store today, like we see when we go to our whatever Total Wine or our local liquor store, our Walmart, our grocery store, uh, the was these things called rectifiers, these middlemen that the distillers sold to, and then it was those middlemen that actually then sold it to the drugstore, the pharmacist, the liquor store, et cetera, et cetera. But what was happening is they were doing some unsavory things because they wanted to make money, right? They, as the middlemen, were trying to make a greater profit. So they would take the whiskey from the distiller and then they would water it down a whole bunch. Now, as you know, watering it down not only is going to lower the proof, but it's going to change the color, going to do all sorts of things, right? Lose some of the pizzazz, all that kind of good stuff. Then, to help bring the color back, they would add in some things like tar, maybe some crushed bugs, and even the spittle from the spit bucket from like their chew. Bing, that kind of thing. Nasty. And would even add a little bit back of some acid, some sulfuric acid, to bring the burns back up after they watered it down. And this multiplied their liquid that they then could sell and make a greater profit. But some of the distillers themselves were like, they were getting upset because they're like, it still had their name on it. I'm like, but that's not our product. That's not what we made. That's not who we are. That's not what we represent. And so a group of distillers got together, led by one man. So, and that one man was this guy right here, that guy right there, Colonel Edmund Haynes Taylor. And he got together with about 30 other distillers, got with a congressman, and passed what is effectively the first Consumer Protection Act in our country's history. As well, it is the direct predecessor to the current FDA of our country. That, of course, was the Bottled in Bond Act. You may have seen some bottles that display Bottled in Bond. That's the Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond. One of the new kids on the block. This is the Holiday Bottled in Bond. You've got here's a Wilderness Trail Bottled in Bond Rye. And what the Bottled in Bond Act did was it set some guidelines for the whiskey. Number one, it had to be distilled in a distillery. They had to be aged under government supervision. So, in a federally bonded warehouse, that meant there could be no tinkering with it, no contamination, anything like that. Had to be aged in that bonded warehouse for at least 4 years, which set again a new standard. Because bourbon at that time didn't have to be aged for 4 years, still doesn't have to be aged for 4 years, but had to be at least at that 4 year mark. And when it was bottled, it had to be bottled at exactly 100 proof always. So you couldn't proof it down any lower, couldn't do any barrel strength offerings or anything like that at 100 proof. That stood the test of time for many years. Later, after that, there was still some discrepancy over real whiskey and fake whiskey. President Roosevelt heard some of that, but never finally came to anything. When William Howard Taft became president in 1909, he heard all the sides and made the Taft decision, which set again some further standards of identity. But really, when it comes to history, and this is where whiskey and our history are so intertwined, to think in our country, the first Consumer Protection Act wasn't even done by the government or instituted by the government. It was instituted by the field, the craft, the commodity to protect their own investment. And of course, that was whiskey, so that they could protect their name, their investment, and the product that they were proud of. Leads us all the way into today. Everything you can be thankful for from the Food and Drug Administration or Consumer Protection Acts, all those things you can thank all the way back to Colonel E.H. Taylor and the Bottled in Bond Act. Now, from a consumer standpoint, one of the things that I love when I go to a shelf and I see a bottled in bond whiskey, even if it's a brand I'm not familiar with, it gives me some assurances, right? I know it's at least 4 years old. I know it's been in that government supervised warehouse, hadn't been tampered, it's not been moved around, bunch of stuff. And I know that it's going to be at least at 100 proof, which to me is kind of that base level proof. I don't like going a lot below that. I know it's going to have, some of that still good quality to it. So it gives me assurances as a consumer, even today, if it's a brand I'm not familiar with, especially in the craft world, and I see it's bottled in bond, great. I'm willing to take a chance on that. So that's your Tuesday toast to history, the Bottled in Bond Act, March the 3rd, 1897. And that stands as a place in our history for many reasons in our political and economic world, as well as in the whiskey world. What's in my glass this evening? I mean, of course, you got to go with the original, right? We're going to go with E.H. Taylor small batch bourbon. Obviously, 100 proof. Absolutely a beautiful and delicious whiskey. Hope you guys have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.